morning, good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're at. And I'm Don Goertz, and I'm here with my friend Greg deMarco, and we're continuing on in our series of talking about John Maxwell's "Everyone Communicates, Few Connect." And today we're going to be talking about Chapter 9, and it's an interesting chapter because it talks about inspiring people, and that connectors inspire people. Isn't that a novel concept there,
It
Greg?
is a novel concept, Don. I'm glad you pointed that out. So this is going to be a good discussion centered around. I like this chapter because it talks about inspiration and cause and purpose. So let's dig in and see what we can uncover.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. Inspiration and cause and purpose. I like what John is doing here. Is he's taking our communication and he's making the communication more about or more of the responsibility on the communicator, not on the person who's actually receiving the communication. And I think that's pretty significant because oftentimes, we don't take what we're saying, or we don't take how we say something seriously enough.
Mhm.
And and we have to think about it a little bit, and draw people in, and to inspire them. And how did you call it? To have purpose and
Cause and purpose.
cause and purpose.
Yeah, I think it's critical because you know I often talk about that book by Viktor Frankl, A Man's Search for Meaning. And in that book, he talks a lot about that cause and purpose uh, being the end game for what we want to accomplish in life. So I really sort of stick to that because isn't it our job to inspire somebody to, it's our job to inspire our audience to be more active, engaged into the conversation rather than us just assume that they should be inspired by us. It's us who helps them get to that point, right?
Yeah, I think it's just thinking that it's interesting that we want to inspire them, but we want to inspire them so that they improve their circumstances, not so much that we want to inspire them to make a sale, although ultimately I think that's what we would like to see
Yeah.
happen. But if we're honest with them and inspirational to them, then it's about them. It's not about us.
And that's, I think that's the whole point that John Maxwell talks about is basically, it's our intention when we get, when we engage with our audience. And if you want to look at this in terms of sales, um, we have to inspire them through various means of uh, contact. Like, better, if we're communicating with them, we want to inspire them to tell us what they really want. And let's face the facts, when you start talking about other people and they know you're interested in them, they kind of open up because most people like to talk about themselves.
Yeah, no,
So,
that's very true. Yeah, yeah.
you know,
So yeah, no, it's interesting. One of the comments that John makes is that along those lines is that self-centered people don't usually connect. Because they're more concerned about their own needs than about their listeners.
oh,
You
you
know,
and you know a lot about that with personality types, and that's right. I think that it's a big shift for somebody if they want to engage someone else and they are self-centered as opposed to selfless. It's hard to want to talk about somebody else because they want to talk about themselves. And the
yeah,
reality is if you want to connect with somebody and you want to build trust, it's not about you, it's about them. So we have to
yeah,
inspire them to talk to us. What are your goals? What makes you happy? And you pointed this out before. What makes you sad? So
yeah,
if we're looking at that in terms of trying to, if you're in real estate sales or furniture sales, it doesn't really matter. What we want to do is encourage someone to tell us what they really want. And you have to instill some kind of trust. And that comes down to how you're communicating with them. Are you inspiring them to do so? What kind of stories are you telling that they can relate to? And you can't tell them a story that they can relate to if you don't understand who they are.
Yeah, yeah, it's all about understanding our listeners and speaking to their needs.
Correct.
And the way that we understand what their needs are is by asking questions.
Hmm.
You've alluded to, talking about different. We want to know, what are you thinking? What are their needs? We want to know what they dream about. We want to know what they sing about. What makes them. Where's their passion? What are they passionate about? What do they cry about? That's what you said. Like you said, what makes them sad? What makes you cry? And understanding those things, I think, uh, is enables us to be more inspirational to our listener. But I think you also got to remember there's different levels of conversations that we have, right? I mean, you're not going to be inspirational or when like at your first meeting,
Yeah.
you got to be careful that you don't go up to them and say, what makes you cry? You know, I mean,
Yeah. What
you
makes you
might you
bawl
might
your
want to.
eyes
I
out?
think, yeah, I think you might want to wait for a little bit, but develop a relationship before you ask that kind of a
Yeah.
question.
What
Or find
what
it.
horrifies you? What are you scared most
Yeah,
of? No, I think Maxwell talks about empowering your listener, and I think that is what we have to aspire to do. Is they're more likely to take an initiative and take action to be their best person. Let's say they're buying something, they're more apt to initiate that if you are empowering them and inspiring them to be confident about what it is they're making a decision about.
yeah. When and they are more open. They're more likely to open up and feel connected with the speaker, when they feel like they're understood, right?
Yeah.
When they feel like they're understood. You know, um, I think that I had a invitation to attend a webinar, and if you're in our line of work or
Hmm.
doing what we do, you probably get lots of invitations to attend this webinar, and many of them are not very good. Some of them are
Let's
very
just be honest
are
with each other, right?
and some of the ones, anyway, so part of this process was they wanted to talk to people that thought that they would like to, you had to go through an interview process
Yeah.
to go through it. And I remember the first conversation that I had, I was very I was skeptical because I've been to a lot of webinars that promised a lot of different things, and 9 times out of 10 they don't deliver what they promise, and that I think is a place that we don't really want to be. We want to always be able to uh, deliver what we promise. So anyway, I went on this webinar, and it actually, it was actually a long one. It was actually over 2 days, and I was quite um, pleased, I think would be the word. Was that I think it was beneficial. It was helpful.
Hmm.
You know, they one of their sticks on it, or one of their things that they said was, we won't sell you anything. Even if you want to buy something, we will not sell you something on this
Oh, a little
webinar.
reverse
And
psychology, eh?
and so I'm thinking, okay, how are they going to do that? Anyway, the webinar was useful. It was helpful. It gave me some, things to think about. And then one of the other conditions they had to be a participant of this webinar was they called it an event. But one of the other conditions of this event was that um, you need to agree to a post event interview. And I thought that was interesting. So anyway, I just had the post interview or post event
Hmm.
interview, and I was quite surprised at how much more open I was after I had gone through this whole process than I was in the first interview that I had with them to get into the event.
And then they tried to
And I
sell you
think
on the post interview.
no, they didn't. They were actually there was not. It was a nice interview, and I thought that I was way more open to talking to this person on the post interview than I was talking to the original person on the pre event. And I think part of that reason I'm thinking that is because they captured my trust. in the event itself, in the way that they did deliver what they said they were going to deliver. And I think that's something that we can, it was actually inspiring to me to have gone through this, to actually be able to start thinking about things in a different way, and modifying, how I'm going to be doing things.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, but these are techniques that, and I call them techniques because they are, that they use to build trust, right?
Yeah.
And it's a good way to do it, because that, in the end, when it comes down to our sales, that's everything. Is how are they gaining trust, but how are you inspiring them to do that?
Yeah, it's like when in a sales conversation, it's when you develop trust with somebody, and you take them through the process, then the next process, or the purchase, or the agreement, to the sale, is a natural part of the
Mm.
process. It's not a back and forth dialogue. It becomes a natural part of part of the process. So I think that's a different way of looking at it. And but when we're truly concerned about the needs of who we're with, of who we're presenting to, then I think that that is a lot easier to achieve, or a lot more likely to achieve. It's never easy,
You
I don't
know
think.
what
But
my thoughts on this whole sales, inspirational sales beyond the pitch and what we do and everything is, what I think I've learned the most out of the last year or two, as I get into my 60s, is that it really has nothing to do. And I'm going to probably get chastised for this, but I don't think it has anything to do with, you've got to have a script, and you have to, they respond in a certain way, you have to respond back in a certain way, and here's the answers, and this is what you'll say if they say this and that. I think that's all a crock. I think it everything comes down to listening, inspiring someone to tell you what's going on, because you're being an active listener and you're asking intelligent questions. And all this sales stuff comes down to a conversation you're having with people. And if you ask the right questions and you listen intently with the intent to help them and understand where they're coming from, your conversation just takes a natural course. It has nothing to do with you reading from a script and saying, okay, they said this, this means I need to say that. I think that is just absolute hogwash. I haven't, whenever I did that, what it does is it instills distrust as far as I'm concerned.
it's like you're referring back to our old vacuum cleaner sales
Yeah,
days.
I am referring back to that. But it's very, it's really disconcerting to me about how much that still goes on today, that kind of sales technique. And I experienced it recently, when I went on my travels. But it's really, to me, is how someone cannot, like, we deal with people. That is our job. And how you
Yep.
deal with people is by asking questions, listening, and actually talking with them. It's not about reading from a script.
Yeah, we want to be able to value who we're with,
But that's
right?
what it comes down to, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
value.
yeah.
Are you valued? Is your work valued? Like, what is it that is important here? And I think really, we have to be more intentional about how we deal with people.
Yeah, I think it's goes to our character, and character is a key component, in inspiration as well, right? Because um, no, I'm not going to go there. We were thinking about,
You caught yourself, did you?
yeah. Well, I was just thinking about it. an example of lack of character, in my opinion. But anyway, that's we won't go there. I think recognizing that your character, what is character? Like that would be another discussion. Like what does it mean to have character? What does it mean to be a person of character? And I think that's a question that we need to answer for ourselves. And if you don't care if you have character, then I mean, I can say, well, Greg deMarco, he's a character, right? Or I could
Well,
say Greg deMarco.
that could mean different things, right?
That's right. Or I could say Greg deMarco, he's a man of character. And we kind of use the same words, but they mean very different things. When I say that you're a man of character, I'm meaning that what you say is what you do.
Yeah,
And that when you say that you care about people, that's demonstrated in what you do. There's fruit.
yeah.
There's fruit to what you say. And if I say you're a character, I mean that just means that you're usually is meant as a um, you have a certain way about you.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. But no, it's a good conversation. I think it all really comes down to, you had mentioned earlier about self-centered, and it comes down to being authentic. And because I think people can tell whether you are pushing something that isn't you versus you just being yourself. I think authenticity is critical. It's essential, and people can tell if a person is genuine, if whether a person genuinely cares about you and your well-being versus not. And I think that's critical in whether or not um, they're going to build any kind of trust in you.
Yeah, no, for sure. They're just when people feel more understood, when people feel understood, and they're gonna be more open to connecting with you. That's simple. And so you think, okay, to inspire them, I need to understand them. I need to know who they are,
Yeah.
and I need to, what they're about.
Well, I think
What's important to them.
I think if somebody you're talking to, your audience, maybe a person, a couple, or whoever, I think if they see that you're invested in them, that you actually care, you're investing your time, you're investing your energy, your knowledge, and you are helping them. I think that goes a hell of a long way with people uh, in how they will trust you, and the fact that you care about their goals and them reaching their goals. I think
Yeah.
that's critical. I think that's a really important point. But it's all how you handle it in the beginning. It always is.
In those initial first 5 minutes of conversation.
I think that it is critical. Although, some people say, "Oh, you need to do it this way, and you need to do it that way, and this way," and there's certain techniques for that. I think really it comes down to authentically you. What is your approach? Like, is it you, or are you
Yeah.
trying to push somebody else's agenda?
Yeah. I can see how you want to be authentically you, but you also want to recognize authentically who they are.
Yes.
I think, and that's where, you get into the personality styles, being able to recognize um, what's important to a person, by, from a conversation to them can help you an awful lot, in understanding how to reach that person, how to inspire that person. Because if I'm, um, I use, as we've talked about in our different conversations. We've mentioned that I certified as a DISC behavioral consultant,
Yeah.
and so the DISC is the four different personality styles: dominant, influencer, steadiness, and compliant. But if I'm an influencer, the influencer, some of their traits are they like to talk. They like to
Yeah.
be very verbal. They're verbal. They like to have fun. If they're not having fun, they don't want to really do something, right?
Yeah. Like an
Um,
extrovert.
you know, Yeah, so if they're an extroverted I type of personality and they're talking to the C type or the compliant person who wants facts and details, if they don't recognize that that person that they're trying to talk to or communicate with is that type of personality, if they haven't asked the right questions to discover that that person is a compliant individual, and more importantly to them is the quality, is the warranty, or those kinds of things. If they haven't done that, if all they want to show is how, like, say you're selling cars, if all they want to do is show how fun this car is to drive, they're not going to reach that compliant person.
No.
Right. So I think it's important to recognize, and the way that you do that is by asking questions. So you ask the questions authentically the way that you are. I mean, you're not, I think it's, you don't want to become somebody that you're not, but you want to be authentic about who you are, but you want to be authentic about who you are, and uncover who they are authentically as well. And then I think you're much better off. You're going to have a much more fruitful conversation, and that'll be on one-on-one. That's a little harder to do when if you're making a presentation to a group. And then if you're selling houses, what I've learned is that if you're selling houses to a couple, typically you got one of each.
Yep.
If you got one compliant person, you got another person that's totally the opposite. I had one instance where I was showing houses to these people. They actually had formerly been my neighbor, and they were so we went out looking at houses, and he was the compliant type, and he wanted to know how things worked, and so we'd walk into the house, and first place he'd go would be into the basement to check out the furnace and the hot water tank and the electrical
Of
panel.
course.
He wanted to know all that stuff.
Yep.
And she was the more the inspiring type of personality. She was, she'd like to talk a lot and have fun and all that kind of stuff. First place she went was into the kitchen because she realized that was going to be where, they would spend a lot of the family time. So it was like, okay, who do I follow?
Yep.
Because they were just
Yep.
those type of personalities. He'd go downstairs, she'd go upstairs. So I'd
Let them
been
do their
around long.
thing.
I've been around long enough to know that the wives make most of the
That's
decisions
right.
as far as in the house. So I followed her. But
Well, that's true. And I was in the yacht business. Um, at first thought, you would think the guy was making all those decisions, but in the end, it was not at all. 95% of them were the wife just going, you know what? No, we're not doing that. We're doing this.
well, that's you find that stuff out by having the conversation and asking the right questions, right?
Yeah.
So and recognizing that it's not all about you making the sale. It's about you finding out what's important to them.
Yeah, that's right. They'll make the sale themselves, really. If you show them
And
the right
and
things that they're looking for, in the end, they will sell themselves on it.
Sure.
And
And that's how you inspire them,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So
So what do you cry about?
every time I have to come here with you, that's what I cry about.
Yeah, 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 right. I guess that's probably right. Probably correct. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's all good.
Yeah, there's all kinds of questions that we can ask, but I think we have to be aware of what's going on in our conversation so that we
Yeah, exactly.
recognize when are the right times to ask those kind of questions or to go into those kind of deep spots. But
Yeah,
anyway, I want to thank you, Greg, for your time today and
fun as always.
uh,
Fun as always.
talking about John Maxwell's book.
Yeah.
We got a couple more chapters, or we got one more
I
chapter?
think
How many
one more.
chapters are in the?
There's 10, I think.
Yeah, 10 chapters in the book. Yeah, because there was 5 at the beginning and 5 at the end. So one more chapter in here, and we'll see you again next week.
Look forward to it, Don. We'll talk to you.
Okay.
See ya.